Alright, so if you're a Nintendo fan and you've been awake during 2020, then you already know that Nintendo's been going through a little bit of a slow period, a little bit of a drought. You know, some people are saying it's because of the pandemic. I personally call bullshit on that, but there's a back and forth on that because, I mean, there's a lot of companies that are still dropping shit. Even 2 companies who are dropping entire consoles. But nonetheless, we're not here to talk about that. That's a topic for a whole nother day. But the point is, even through this drought, there has been one thing that has persisted throughout the year, and maybe even the year before, and even like late 2018. Like, I think I covered this in a PREMulous roundup back in like 2018, real talk. But either way, the rumors of a new Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo Switch Pro or whatever they're gonna call it, we don't know, an XL, we don't know. But the rumors have been persisting. They keep coming back, and people have been talking about this non-stop, and there's just been a new set of leaks, and basically, we're going to talk about it. So a lot of people are reporting on this, but we're going to take it to the source that they keep pointing to, which is Bloomberg. And you can see from this tweet, published, Nintendo plans to give Switch another hardware update next year. Expect good lineup of Nintendo games too. So this is obviously tweeted by the guy who wrote the article for Bloomberg with a pretty original Twitter username, let's be real. And the article says, Nintendo plans upgraded Switch console and major games for 2021. Strong lineup of Nintendo games set to accompany new hardware. Update would make the Switch Nintendo's most enduring console, which basically means they're going to extend the length of it. They want it to last a long time. Nintendo plans to debut an upgraded model of its Switch console next year, along with a lineup of new games, ceding 2020's holiday spotlight to rival devices from Sony Corp and Microsoft Corp. The specifications of the new machine have yet to be finalized, though the Kyoto-based company has looked into including more computing power and 4K high-definition graphics. And of course, it mentions the fact that PS5 and Series X are coming out this holiday, so obviously Nintendo gotta have an answer to that. The release of the upgraded Switch will be coupled with or followed by a slew of games from Nintendo itself and related outside studios, the people said. Those games would address a wide range of players, from casual gamers seeking small doses of escapism to more devoted fans putting in marathon gaming sessions. Maybe that means good battery life. The focus on next year's pipeline explains Nintendo's relatively quiet software release schedule so far this year, the people said. So they're basically explaining the drought. The company has struggled to keep up with the demand for its existing Switch and Switch Lite, which is actually pretty believable. Because I mean, I mentioned this in a previous video, but yeah, Nintendo Switch is literally just surpassed the Nintendo Entertainment System. So now the Switch is the second highest selling Nintendo home console. So home console, not including handhelds like the DS, which is obviously the GOAT system. But as you can see, the Wii did 101 million, Switch has done 62 million in just over 3 years, which means if they extend it with a Switch Pro, they could surpass Wii sales and the Switch will become the highest selling Nintendo console. Period. Again, besides the DS, because that's handheld and that's goated, and the Game Boy and Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. Well, actually, it was supposed to get. You know what I mean? This article from Go Nintendo is also talking about the Switch Pro, and they are also pulling from 2 sources, so Bloomberg as well as Jamatsu, and they've kind of summarized it here. And it says that Nintendo has considered features like improved processing power and 4K resolution support. Whether they actually went ahead with those features remains to be seen. And yeah, basically this new Switch is getting the most of Nintendo's attention, which explains why first party support has been dead this year. And in this article from Video Games Chronicle, there's a prediction here, and they say, I predict 4K support, bigger cartridge sizes, and of course beefed up components. Which by bigger cartridge sizes, I don't think they mean physically bigger cartridge sizes, you know, like going from like Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Color cartridge. I think they just mean the space, because the Nintendo Switch cartridge can fit, I think, about 32 gigabytes, so I think they're just going to allow bigger games to fit on a cartridge. So the most important question regarding this topic is, of course, what does PREMulous think about all of this? Because it's your boy, right? So let's start with the basic shit. Bigger cartridge sizes to fit bigger games, that's believable, because I guess one of the big reasons that they're even beefing up the power of this thing is so that they can run newer games, aka games that are being developed for PS5 and Series X that the original Switch is just not going to be able to handle, because even a lot of PS4 and Xbox One games were struggling to run on Switch. So if PS5 is coming out, they need to have an answer for that third-party support. So having bigger cartridges for some of these games will take way too much space, it only makes sense. And of course, the drought being because of the Switch Pro also makes sense as well, because most likely if they're developing any games, they want it to run front and center on Switch Pro at, more powerful frame rates or resolutions or whatnot. Let's get into the 4K thing. Is this really going to do 4K? Yes, but actually no. The way I see it is, it's going to support 4K, but it's not actually going to be like a 4K console, like what Series X is trying to be. I believe that it's going to have the ability to output 4K, at least when docked. We don't know what it's going to do in handheld mode. A lot of people are hoping for 1080p screens and 1080p gameplay in handheld mode, which the current Switch is I think 720p. So going from a 720p to a 1080 screen on handheld, and then going from 1080p docked to 4K docked is an improvement. But I want you guys to remember the PS4 Pro. That console was promoted as somewhat of a 4K device, and I'm sure you can watch 4K Netflix on it, and there are some games that will run a native 4K. But a lot of those PS4 Pro games are smartly upscaled. Like they run at like 1440p, and then they like have some smart checkerboarding technology to make it feel like almost 4K but not quite native 4K. And then obviously they can run the actual HUD elements at 4K, so it still looks sharp on the HUD. And it kind of fools you to thinking it's real 4K when in fact it's not, because they can't handle real 4K. Remember that 1440p is not even twice as many pixels as 1080, but 4K is 4 times the pixels of 1080. So there's a lot of difference there. To be able to promote it as 4K, but instead be running the game at a low resolution with smart upscaling, because if they're working on some big boy games for 2021, I can imagine they want it to output at this 4K so they can promote that. So I don't know, maybe if it's 3D World Deluxe and it's coming out, when the Switch Pro comes out and they say on the Switch Pro it's gonna do 4K 60, and it's like, ooh, 4K? And it's obviously not real 4K, but still, it's still a selling point. So they're gonna have their first party titles coming out being able to output 4K, plus they'll understand their own hardware better. Third party developers with their lazier coding and not understanding the hardware as well, they'll still be able to run on the Switch Pro. They probably won't target 4K, but at least if they can run PS5 and Series X games at a playable state, so like at least 30 FPS at a resolution that is at least 720 or 1080p, then it will be enough to keep them going and probably allow the Switch to do another, I don't know, like 3-4 years before moving on to the next hardware. Given that they've done over 60 million units, it's like 20 million a year. They at least need to beat the Wii before they move on to the next hardware. So if they keep up with 20 million units a year, they'll beat the Wii in like 2 years. So at the very, very earliest, we wouldn't see a new console until 2022. But they'll probably hold out till like 2023, 2024. Also, let's not forget, 2021 will be 4 years since the legendary Super Mario Odyssey. And if they're working on a Super Mario Odyssey 2 or a brand new 3D Mario, a Switch Pro would be a great way to launch something like that, because to advertise a brand new 3D Mario, taking advantage of that Pro hardware and that 4K, still allowing the original Switch owners to play it at a lower resolution, maybe lower frame, I don't know, but having a new Mario game in 4K would be insane. And if those 3D Mario remakes are actually happening, and we get to see like Galaxy at 4K without emulation, Sunshine at 4K, 64 4K, like remade at 4K? If it's not just a port, I don't know if it's a port or a remaster or but we'll see. If we get 64 remade of, oh my god, that's gonna be fucking insane. Either way, this new Nintendo Switch Pro, is it new Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch? I don't know. Their name systems are weird. It's looking like it's gonna be a good thing. Personally, there's some things that I want to see that I don't know if we'll see. Some people are mentioning like a screen that has very little bezel. That'll be a good thing. Some people have also mentioned Bluetooth support for the earphones. Like people want to connect their wireless earphones. Now that all the smartphones have removed their headphone jacks, everyone's getting wireless earphones. They want to be able to use that. So I agree with that as well. But don't remove the headphone jack. People are also mentioning, and by people I mean me, people are mentioning XL Joy-Cons, aka Joy-Cons that are not made for splitting in two and using as tiny 2-player controllers, but real controllers that can actually be used for real shit. For example, let me whip out my Switch right now. I've got this hoary third-party, controller that has a nice D-pad, great analog sticks, no analog triggers because it's a Switch, so why would they add that? But yeah, it's very nice to use this. It doesn't actually have a battery in it, so you have to use it in connected to the Switch, but it is a really good device. It also doesn't have most of the Joy-Con features like the motion and shit and all that. But if they made XL Joy-Cons that took advantage of this kind of form factor with a real D-pad and whatnot, I would be so happy. So things like that are definitely things that I want to see in a Switch Pro, because as someone who already owns a Switch, they have to do something significant for me to get the Pro version. That also brings the question of exclusives. Are they going to put certain games on the Switch Pro that are exclusive to the Switch Pro? If we look at the new Nintendo 3DS, there were a few exclusives, but mostly it was just, it will run better on this than the regular 3DS. So I don't actually know if they're going to go that route. I believe that there will be like third-party games that just can't run on the original Switch with whatever coding efficiency they're doing. So they'll just be, you know, Switch Pro exclusives. But for Nintendo, I fully believe that the first-party games are going to be Switch Pro and regular Switch. Of course, any non-big graphical game like indie games are going to run on regular Switch, and then they'll just promote the Switch Pro version as the 4K version. So literally everyone wins, except those who don't get the Switch Pro and they want to play third-party games that aren't common for the main Switch. But
it is what it is. It is what it is.
So yeah, I think that wraps it up for this video. The Switch Pro, it's looking like it's happened. Like, there's no smoke without fire, right? And I don't really like using that term, but I just feel like they've been talking about this for so long, since late 2018. I just feel like at this point, for there not to be a Switch Pro, I'll be completely like flabbergasted. We haven't had a direct in ages. There's been a drought. It's not because of the pandemic. Let's just hope that when they reveal this thing, they get it right and it looks sleek, and I want to throw money to get it, even though I have a regular Switch. We'll see what happens. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell. More content coming soon to the channel. You know, we played some Fall Guys. You know, we're doing all sorts of shit on the channel, so stay tuned to your boy. Let me know what you guys want to see in a Switch Pro, or if you still don't believe the rumor, let me know what games you want to see, like third-party games to come to the Switch Pro, and first-party games as well. But yeah, it's your boy, PREMulous, Rem Gang, and I'm out.